So good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director, Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host another Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from Forsys Metals. He's Director of IR, Richard Parkhouse, and Pine Van Wyk, the Country Director, is going to drop in here momentarily as well. Now, during today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook, and I will take your questions at the end. You can type your questions into the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Forsys Metals webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct the listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the company's corporate presentation. That can be found on its website, forsysmetals.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'll highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation, seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Forsys Metals. So with that, Richard, why don't you kick it off?
Great, thanks very much indeed, Dave. Much appreciated, and great to be back with you. Now, I'm in sunny UK, and it is sunny at the moment. And Pine, the in-country director, is down in Namibia, and ironically, it's absolutely torrential rain. Hopefully, he will be joining us a little bit later on. So what we hope to do today is give you an overview of where we are with Forsys Metals and our project down in Namibia. We've got a lot going on down there, and I think we've got some really exciting catalysts this year, and 2025 is going to be an exciting year, I think, for everybody in terms of all the work streams coming together that are going on. So without any further delay, we don't need to talk about forward-looking statements because Dave has gone through those very kindly. So let's dive straight into the flagship Norasa project overview. This is what it's called. It's called the Norasa project, and potentially it's one of the world's largest permitted undeveloped projects at the moment. We are 100% owned 2 deposit sites, Valencia and Namibplaas, both of which are in the Orongo region of Namibia, about kind of 4.5 k's away from each other. So there's great economies of scale there, potentially. It, as I said, is based in Namibia, which, if you don't know Namibia, it's a hugely mining-friendly environment. We'll look at that in more detail in the next slide. But look, just to put a bit of substance on it and take you back into the past, post-Fukushima, all explorers and developers obviously went into a care and maintenance period. But prior to that, we had actually listed the company on TSX in 2007, and we had acquired these assets over the next few years, and we own them 100%, as I said. So, but during care and maintenance period from 2011 onwards, really up to about 2021, even though we managed to do some drilling, we managed to get our permitting sorted out, it was uneconomic for anybody in this business. But in 2021, when the world woke up and realized that actually nuclear had to be a forefront part of anybody's energy strategy for security, and all of the governments around the world really woke up and forged forward new policies on where nuclear was going to fit, the price started to move, and so did Forsys again. We actually got we sold our gold reserves in 2021. We did a financing through our partners, Red Cloud, and we realigned our strategy, realigned the board, and most importantly, we recruited Pine Van Wyk down in Namibia to actually drive forward the project for us. So, over the last few years, 2023, 24, a lot has been going on. We actually last year did an MRE update, which Pine will take you through. We renewed EPLs, we got IECC approvals, and we obviously did a lot of augmentation and infill drilling, and carried out, as we are still doing, a lot of optimization strategies. So in the, let's just take a quick look at Namibia. And it's probably the last, you know, in 2022, it was the third largest producer of uranium in the world. And actually over the last, gosh, 45 years, cumulatively, it's been second largest producer in the world. And of course, 45 years ago was when Rossing, the very famous mine, actually started developing its uranium production. And the country itself has Germanic roots, and as you would expect, therefore, it's highly regulated. It's probably the least corrupt country in Africa, and it's hugely well run, and therefore a low risk jurisdiction. And you know, it has all sorts of minerals across the board, but it's been host to 3 of the top mines in uranium, which I'm sure you'll know, Rossing, Husab, and Paladin are the names, which you can actually see on the map on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, Valencia, one of the most important aspects of Valencia, one of our deposits, is one of only 3 permitted undeveloped projects in Namibia. And we have a license which goes out till 2033, a full mining license. Now, the only other thing really I want to say on Namibia is the fact that it's got great infrastructure, rail, road, it's close to the water and power supplies, and also the harbour down in Walvis Bay, which you see on the map, just south of Swakopmund. And, you know, that's 90 k's away, but great infrastructure for actually delivery. So moving on, again, just focusing in on that map, I mentioned that we have a full mining license on Valencia. We have an EPL on Namibplaas, which is valid until November next year, and of course renewable as well. And our ECC until next year, which will be renewable as well. And I think what we're trying to do is look at other opportunities in the area where we can actually sort of infill some of the gaps. So, you know, one of the things we have done is we've applied for a new EPL license as well, which at the moment is going through all of the regulatory approvals. But, you know, that will necessarily bind some of the sites together. And in the future, we will be looking for other sites as well. So this is just a slide. We talked about it being potentially one of the largest permitted uranium projects. I mean, we estimate that we could be producing something in the region of 4 to 5 million pounds annual production a year. So this just gives you an indication kind of against the some of our peers as to where we stand. Now, you know, of course, these are estimates at the moment. A lot of calculation is going on as we work through our work streams. But it's just an interesting thing to look at how we siege ourselves against our peers. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with the fundamentals and the backdrop to the uranium market at the moment. But the reason that I wanted to put this slide up again is it just demonstrates how desperate it is for new projects such as ours to actually get off the ground and into production. The whole world is basically being driven by, you know, the demand for electricity, which looks, as you see on the graph on the left-hand side, to go up significantly with surging in the East, industrialization and urbanization. And in the West, you know, we've read about how the AI data centers, Google, Meta, and Amazon, and so forth, are all actually looking at their own nuclear strategies purely to support their own needs. So the reality is there's a supply-demand gap, and it just demonstrates when you look at the number of plants which are operating at the moment, and then the number of plants that the WNA forecast in the future, taking potentially by 2040 nuclear plants up to 840 in the world. And so one can see where this aggressive demand will be coming from to actually gain new supply. So we believe strongly that Forsys is positioned to leverage the uranium market. Now, I mean, we're all clear, we've all seen what's happened to the spot, which has been, jumping kind of up and down. It's quite volatile and it's down at the moment, and it's been clearly impacted, by Trump, by Putin, and by AI geeks in China attacking the AI technology world, which has had knock-on effects to what their supply needs are. But the real important one is the long-term price, which has consistently moved upwards. Now, this is slightly old, a little bit out of date, but the reality is that the long-term contract price has consistently moved upwards. Now, we believe that we're in a great position. We believe we're still very, very much in a bull market. We see that we're operating in a top jurisdiction. And this is the highlight in my view, we have the best specialist team in Namibia driving the progress. Very, very few uranium projects really have and can almost boast the fact that they have such a fantastic, experienced execution team. And this team do strongly believe that they can take advantage and avail all the new technologies to transform how the project can, work and be financed, particularly, in terms of minimizing CapEx and OpEx. And of course, they're working terribly hard on upgrading and augmenting our resource base through their drilling strategy. Now, Pine is going to obviously tell you in a moment when I hand over to him where we are in this project, what we've done in more detail, and where we're headed and the milestones that we're really aiming for this year. But before he does that, let's just have a quick overview of the capital structure of Forsys. Now, the thing that I want to point out here is the share ownership more than anything else. Most recently, we did an unbrokered private placement, which was supported by insiders. And that was basically the board members and also the management team. And I think this demonstrates how much we all believe in the project that we're involved in. And at the same time, Stefano Roma came on the board, who is through his trading company, the most significant shareholder, and has actually managed and directed funds in the past as the major shareholder of the company for many years. So that's why now we really look as though the management team is a significant part of this share ownership. And the share price obviously has gone with the whole of the uranium equity sector, which is obviously down-ticked at the moment. But this is not a slightly old slide. I say the 9th of March was when the slide was put out. But I do see that this is, we're now up at 50 cents. So look, I am keen to now hand over to Pine and let him take this on. Pine.
Richard, about 10 seconds ago, Pine actually disappeared. So.
Oh, did he? Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, sorry, folks. In which case, what I will do is let me take up the slack here. This is the Namibian project team which we were talking about, with Pine up on the top left-hand side. Now, sadly, he's not here right to talk about himself, but he has worked on all of the big mines and projects, the uranium mines down in Namibia. He is Namibian, and he has more experience than pretty much anybody else potentially in the world with regard to the operations of uranium mines, the extension of projects, and actually putting projects together and building all of the kit. He's done multiple feasibility studies in the past for different firms. And this is his team, which are just the key people, which cover metallurgists, geologists, miners. And so there's a significant own team there. And on top of that, of course, we have our QP external consultants who are independent, who we rely upon, and so forth. So it is a significant execution team which we have moving the projects forward. Now, in 2024, a lot went on. We actually published the updated 43101 MRE, which was a major milestone. And Pine, I think, has just come back in. Okay, I'll keep going until he jumps in. And, you know, I think we last year were further de-risking the project, you know, through a variety of different drilling programs around Valencia with showing excellent results. And these have come out periodically in news releases as we see this coming through. We've obviously been focusing on all of the agreements which need to be put in place with Namibplaas and water. And one really interesting thing which is really being looked at, and you won't know the name, Heilbron, but this is a neighboring farm whose strategy is purely to sell solar power. So over a wide area, our neighboring farm is putting this project together. And of course, you know, as neighbors, we can avail that. And that potentially is going to reduce our power bill down by, we would hope, something in the region of about 30%, which is great. I mean, all of the things we were looking at in terms of optimization, including a shift from tank leaching over to heap leaching optimization studies, again, all oriented around how we can reduce CapEx and OpEx using new technologies as we can actually put them in place. And, you know, we've been looking at optimizing recovery rates. And, you know, in the first instant, in terms of actually getting a huge amount of rock, we undertook our first box cut, rock blast at Valencia site. We've got a slide on that later, so I'll go through that then. So one of the things I'd like to point out is the land acquisition that we've made. Again, this was put in a news release at the beginning of the year. Last year, we actually went through the process of acquiring the land around Namibplaas. The previous farmer who we had the agreement with over many years actually sold and left, and we had to strike a new agreement with the new farmer. It took some time, but the reality is that we've ended up necessarily agreeing to own the land ourselves, which is a real coup. So this is a resolution, and it means that we now have, once it's been approved, which is just a regulatory format, we will get total access to the land, and we'll be able to start drilling again on the land around Namibplaas. And so I think, you know, with this, let's look at where the 2024 mineral reserve estimate was established. We've got measured and indicated of 46.4 and inferred, which is all in Namibplaas, of the 42. Now, the only reason that it's inferred is as a result of the fact that we were having this land acquisition issue and we couldn't necessarily get to do some further drilling to substantiate the indicated status of the Namibplaas resource. However, now, of course, this year we're going to be able to change that. And, you know, I think I'm just seeing that Pine has now entered the room again. He keeps being thrown out for some reason, and I'm not quite sure whether that's a technology issue down in Namibia. But let me keep going until he butts in, if I may.
Richard, can you hear me?
Pine, hi. I've explained to everybody that I'm in sunny England and you're in very, very wet Namibia.
Yes. No, we've had a lot of rain. The roads is washed away. Traffic is backing up. All the rivers are flowing. The whole country is in turmoil because we can't handle this amount of rain.
Wow.
So sorry for that.
No, not at all. Really delighted you've joined. And I've been filling in for you, and we're up to the milestone target slide.
Okay, good. Richard, thank you. Thank you to the audience for tolerating the bit of technical hiccup that we've had so far. So I think for us, you know, we are at a stage in the project life where we are really trying to optimize our capital costs for this investment as well as our operating cost. And we obviously are working on a wide range of initiatives where we want to continue to improve the economics of the project. As Richard has indicated, you know, the uranium market is still getting some headwinds at the moment. The spot price is a little bit under pressure. We obviously just want to make sure that, you know, by the time prices recover to the levels where we would like them, that our project is fully optimized and, you know, we can produce a definitive feasibility study that ultimately, you know, does attract, you know, the right level of funding and investors to support our project. So we continue to work on both our mineral resources, our mine designs, our mining method and equipment selection, and run various trade-off studies and scenarios to see which of those would be the best scenarios for us. There's exciting work that we've started on the new technologies of ore sorting, both gamma and XRF sorting, that has, with early scouting work, indicated quite some positive trends for us. We've now started to embark on the second phase and the third phase of that metallurgical testing to fully evaluate what the ore sorting potential could be for our lower grade uranium project here in Namibia. So these studies is ongoing for the next couple of months, and then we will hopefully conclude a lot of these initiatives and then build that into our future pre-feasibility study, which we are targeting to have done by, you know, the later half of this year. So we are obviously, you know, want to continue to improve, you know, our size of our project and make it, you know, a global scale, long life project, as it has been typical for the uranium projects here in Namibia. We are unfortunately, to some extent, the lower grade region of the uranium world, but the economies of scale is really what makes these projects successful and has supported the Namibian uranium industry over the last 40 years where we've demonstrated that we can sustainably operate at profitability, these low-grade uranium projects. So we have been focusing on quite a bit of additional drilling over the last couple of months. We obviously are trying to extend the existing main resource of the Valencia ore body. We've identified, two significant zones. The one is Valencia South, where we've encountered, with some infill drilling and extension drilling, substantial mineralization in a number of holes. And then the Valencia West area is a new zone that we basically started to map on surface, and then we started to systematically drill that and follow that. And where we previously believed there was no mineralization, we now suddenly have, that additional extension there, and we are quite hopeful that, when we update our mineral resources, that will add, to the existing mineral resource. We've also done some further definition and infill drilling around the Valencia East area to properly map those lenses that are running there. It looks like they're slightly higher grade and continue at depth. So the additional holes will improve the classification of our mineral resource in that area. And then the Jolly Zone is actually quite an interesting area. It was tested a couple of years ago before the project was put into care and maintenance as one or two holes. We felt it was not fully explored, and we basically continued with some additional holes in that area. And we ended up discovering that there's actually two distinct lenses of reasonable grade uranium mineralization in that area. And we are currently continue drilling in that area until we get to a point where we feel okay. We've now understand the structures, and we will include that in our mineral resource. So we plan to basically complete this drilling over the next month or so, subject to weather conditions, and then start to finalize analysis and then feed that into an updated mineral resource for the Valencia deposit. That's just some indication of what the deposit basically looks like, and that is available for your view. So here's just an indication. If you look at the area to the west or the left sort of schematic, you can see there we've got the Valencia West target that we've drilled there in an area that we previously believed was there were no further mineralization, and we've now picked up in all the holes that we've drilled there additional resource. So that now needs to be modeled similar to the blocks that you basically see on the right of that schematic. And similar for the Valencia East target. Certain areas that we thought was, low grade mineralization, you can see there certain boreholes now encountered, quite high grade mineralization, and that will definitely upgrade the mineral resources that we have, in the existing mineral resource statements. So, late last year, we had our first blast that we did on the Valencia ore body. The purpose of this initial box cut blast was in essence to prepare some bulk sample test work material that we will use during the later part of this year. And, that is a significant milestone for us in the development of our project. Coming on to Namibplaas, as Richard indicated, Namibplaas is still under our exclusive prospecting license. At this stage, all of the mineral resource in this, second ore body that we have is still classified as inferred, and we now have a drilling program that we combined and worked together with our QPs that needs to sign off on the resource that we will complete, and then we will be able to upgrade most part of this resource into the indicated category. So there's a drill plan for the next 4 to 5 months after Valencia is finished, and then we'll go and do that drilling, and then hopefully we can update that mineral resource also. Further, we've also identified a radiometric anomaly that was previously not tested by any drilling, to the west of the main Namibplaas deposit, and it's quite a rugged area to get access to. I think that's why it was never really looked at in the past, but we've now identified some road access and riverbed access into that area, and we have put out a couple of holes that we want to test that target. And you can see, the sort of outline of the area that we've mapped physically on the radiometric anomaly. So hopefully we can report some good results in the future there. However, we still need to go in, do the drilling, and then see what is down there. Very similar pictures, just on the style of the mineralization that you see at the Namibplaas and the resource numbers for that deposit. On the process side, we are planning at this stage a very conventional 3-stage crushing process, which will incorporate now high pressure grinding mills, or HPGR as we call it in the industry, as the 3rd stage. From there it will be positioned onto heap leach pads. We will irrigate it with sulfuric acid solution, and then the uranium is basically extracted, goes into various ponds, gets absorbed by ion exchange resins as a first upgrade process, followed by solvent extraction process, and then ultimately precipitation, calcination, and then drummed and shipped off to the customers. So fairly proven and conventional technology applied. This just gives you an indication of the amount of engineering that we've already put into the project. I know it's a little bit small on your screens, but we've got the primary crushing, the secondary crushing and screening plants, the tertiary crushers, the intermediate stockpiles, and in the background you can see the heap leach pads, and then also on the right bottom corner you can see the rest of the ion exchange, solvent extraction, and final product engineering that has been done so far. This just gives us a bit of a layout, and with the highlights, what we call the racetrack heap leach pad structure there. We've got the main pit and the waste dumps, and then obviously all the refuse material after the heap leach that will accumulate over the life of mine of the project. So ore sorting, I've touched briefly on that. We are currently looking at 2 sort of main technologies. The one is to use gamma ray ore sorting, which is already applied, as truck scanning technology in the existing mines. But it looks like, technology has moved on, and we can potentially develop that into a conveyor belt scanning system that will do an initial crude sort, and then follow that crude sort, we will then apply rock by rock sorting with XRF technology. The ability of computer and computing capacity over the last couple of years has significantly improved the rate at which instruments can process readings and then look at rock by rock and in a split second of time decide if this rock needs to be accepted or rejected or be classified as somewhere in the middle. And, 10 years ago, you could maybe process 20, 30 tons an hour through a sorter. Now you can, run it at 10, 15 times the capacity, and that makes this technology much more economic viable, in the larger scale operations like ours. So we, as I say to other people, watch this space. We are doing significant work on this, and this could be a serious game changer, for the economics of our project. Just some basic flow sheet configurations. I'm not going to go into that detail. It is available as part of the presentation. Okay, so I think to wrap up the value that is within our project. I mean, we are in one of the top tier jurisdictions for uranium mining. We have a very strong local team that has actually been involved both in the operation and the development of uranium mines, extensive experience, all people with 25 years plus experience in the industry that can move the project forward. The Valencia project is already fully licensed, so we can, as soon as market moves in the right direction, we can push the green button, move into execution rapidly, and bring the project into production, and then at least run 10, 15 years on that ore body, and then later on we can then start to feed the Namibplaas ore body in there. Another aspect that we do believe is bringing substantial potential savings for us is the new technologies that are evolving in mining equipment. There's a big drive to move mining equipment into the electrification, battery operated or hybrid technologies, and there's some serious claims already of up to 15%, 20% cost savings, compared to conventional type of mining. And then Namibia is very renowned for our solar intensity, and we are in discussions with parties that can provide solar power to our project at up to 30% lower than what the grid power would cost, and we are busy doing those trade-offs as well. So a lot of opportunities still not fully evaluated, and definitely a space to watch to see how we move this project forward. From a value perspective, we obviously do believe that our valuation at this stage for our pounds in the ground is substantially undervalued compared to some of our peers, and I think that just supports our view that we have a compelling investment opportunity for investors on this specific project. And I think that's the end of our story, Richard, unless I've missed something that you feel still needs to be highlighted.
No, I think that's hugely good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys. Richard and Pine, it was great that you were able to drop in after all. So we are going to start the Q&A portion of the webinar now. Reminder to everybody online, please, you can type your questions into the chat box and we will get to as many as we can. Now, I already have a few questions, guys. A very exciting year, a lot of catalysts being planned, but you focused a lot on drilling over the past year or so, and that's given you a little bit of momentum here. You touched on these deposits, but Valencia West, this might be another deposit, might be the same deposit. What are you seeing there? Are you trying to combine these areas?
Yeah, Richard, David, if I go back to that picture there, let me just scroll back a little bit. This thing is obviously taking its time. What is significant for us on that westward extension on the Valuation deposit? So if you look on the left hand side of the screen, where we got that west area, so I don't have a line in there where you actually see the pit, but that western section was all classified as waste, because to get to the deeper mineralization on the right hand side, we had to strip out and do a pushback and remove all of that waste, and now suddenly, that area is actually going to yield maybe 30-40% of the volume as mineralized. So it's going to reclassify our stripping ratio, dropping our stripping ratio further down, and we're going to get some near surface, early on mineralization, and we might actually have a bit of a smaller starter pit, for early production there. So there's obviously some more infill drilling that we will do once we've done the remodeling, and maybe we'll find a few more jewels, that is hidden, below surface, because obviously we are, just following and trying to map, outcrop elasticite sort of lenses, and then follow those and drill them. But it's very well known that these deposits, might have good blobs of material, below the surface that you only discover once you actually drill into them and then, build it out. So exciting area.
Yeah. Well, certainly anything you find down there will help reduce strip ratio. Not that you have an issue with strip ratio at all. Jolie zone, another zone that's located a little bit to the north. How does that compare? Would that be something that could be brought into a potential mine plan as well?
Yeah. So, David, we've only done, I think, 6 or 7 holes so far. There's another 6 or 7 holes that we want to do there. We haven't even plugged that zone into any geological modeling software yet. But we can sort of look at the at the borehole information, and we can see the distinct lithologies and grade profiles. So that's one of the areas that I'm excited to get to, that we can just finish that drilling and plug that into a model and start to see what the grades and the tonnages. It's probably from a proximity perspective, I don't think it will join the main Valuation pit, but it could potentially develop into, a substantial satellite pit in fairly close proximity to where the crushing plant would be.
Okay. And what can you tell us about grades in these new areas, Valencia West, Jolie, even recent infill drilling at the main zone pit area? They do appear a little bit higher than average resource grades.
Yeah, I think, David, it's definitely looking...
Richard, are you hearing him?
No, I'm not hearing him. He's frozen. And so he's got a technology issue down there.
Yeah, no, understood. Weather impact. So, okay, my next question was probably for him as well. Talking about mine design optimization, really based around several new technologies. I was just maybe looking for a little bit of color, Richard. I'm not sure if you can answer this, but as far as the ore sorting goes, heap leach, high pressure grinding, which of these options might best look like it would best impact economics, and how might they save in CapEx and OpEx?
Yeah, look, all of these new technologies provide upside opportunities for us, and they're all being examined. I think, as Pine said, some of these have only really been introduced over the last sort of 2-3 years, and so we're actually examining all of them And the very thought process is that if you can actually, first of all, utilize ore sorting to separate out what you don't want to spend money on, and then you can actually crush it to exactly the right level, which then will maximize the potential usage of sulfuric acid on it, which is obviously one of the key inputs and one of the costly items. Then you get a far more compelling process flow or manufacturing sort of plant as you go through the process into the heap leach. So realistically, to answer your question, they all can play a part.
Okay, great. And now we have a question on potential timetables here. I think you suggested, or at least Pine suggested, a resource estimate in hand later this year. If that's the case, when would you expect like an updated DFS, investment decision? How quickly could you arrange for project financing and get into production?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously we're talking to people all the time, and people are aware of the, time scale of where we are at the moment. Now, I think everybody's aware that this has taken longer than we had hoped, but realistically it's because so much work is being done for very, very good reason in terms of making the financial credibility of the project even better through optimizing CapEx and OpEx, and actually, most importantly, augmenting the resource as well. So the objective, I think, is that later, and in fact, I think one of the things, if I turn to slowly going through, I'm just turning to the last slide again, but I can start talking it. If you think that we're finishing our drilling work around Valencia, which is not only looking at confirming what's there already, but all of these new sites around Valencia that we have been, you've just been talking with Pine about. We would hope necessarily for that to be included in a new MRE for Valencia, kind of in the August, September timeframe. Now, there's a lot of work to do on Namibplaas as well, and so that work is going to be immediately moved on to, but that's going to be 4 months or so of drilling work. And again, it'll not only lead to transposing what is at the moment categorized as inferred into indicated, but actually it's also looking at new sites around Namibplaas as well. So the reality is that that won't be in this next MRE, but it would be effectively part of the augmentation, further augmentation later on. But we would want to necessarily bring together the PEA and pre-feasibility study based on what augmentation we can see and what optimization results we can deliver. And so we're looking at really towards the end of this year.
Okay. So what are your short-term catalysts? Mainly just drill results until we see that resource estimate third quarter? And do you require any funding to get to those goals?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is when we looked at the capital structure slide, what I didn't say was that we have no debt and that we've actually got sort of 9 million in the bank, or roughly that after the private placement. There are thoughts certainly that we're going to do another top-up financing potentially in the near future, which we're talking to yourselves about. I think there are obvious catalysts from us. One of which is yes, the next MRE, Two, all of the optimization strategies coming to an end, and us being able to deliver the NPV, a significant NPV for the project with optimized CapEx and OpEx. But I think there are external catalysts as well, which we've got to consider, and those, of course, are the uranium market itself. And I think everybody's aware it's a bit confused because of Putin and Trump and AI geeks, but fundamentals haven't changed, and we see this as really moving significantly on in the future, and I see that as being a big catalyst too.
Yeah, certainly is a confused market. I know there are rumors out there about Kazatomprom and the Kazakhs nationalizing the uranium industry in the country as well. So that's created a lot of upheaval to date. But whether or not that's true or not, time will tell. But anyways, getting closer to the top of the hour here, Richard, maybe just one last question. You gave us a good idea what to expect from Namibia. One of my favorite places. Certainly a top-tier uranium jurisdiction. I even brought my wife up there. Down
Me
there.
too.
Yeah. There's extensive uranium production there. How has that helped Forsys attract skilled, experienced workforce? And are there still any key positions that you need to fill? Yeah,
I mean, look, it's really interesting, actually. Having been down there, having kicked the chairs, met the people, and understood the country far better. And I'd recommend anybody to take a vacation down there and understand the country. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. But I think our key differentiator is the fact that we know some of the top people working with us now who have been involved in the uranium industry. Now, of course, the mining is Namibia's bread and butter. They want everything highly well regulated because they want to ensure that their population gets employed, and secondly, that they earn their taxes from the revenues, and it's all very fair in the way they do it as well. Now, because we have this top execution team involved, they have worked with all of the big mines, they've worked with all the players, they know who everybody is. And so therefore, as and when buttons need to be pressed in terms of building teams of people, as and when, infrastructure is being built, they know exactly where to go and who to ask and how to entice. So I think our key differentiator is the fact that the people who we have on the ground there already.
Yeah, no, well said about Namibia, and mining focused, and I think they are quite self-sufficient when it comes to the workforce. So don't rely on expats. So.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Richard, why don't we leave it there? So, Richard of Forsys Metals, thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, please send my regards on to Pine. It was great spending time with you guys here in Toronto when you recently got here. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. A reminder that Red Cloud will be back next Wednesday. That will be Taylor sitting down with Kessel Run Resources. So that's March 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you for supporting Red Cloud's webinar series.